I just wanted to walk into traffic, and I didn't know why I felt this way. I just felt this empty, gaping hole. And my medical system teaches people to not have agency and to trust their inner healing. Whatever you have going on in your subconscious, it's going to bring it to light. It's going to project it right back into your brain. But plant medicine helps me learn to work through the resistance that comes up and tap into my own inner strength and inner healing intelligence. I have a lot of hope for the momentum of this new renaissance for psychedelics. My name is Nina Boyd, and I am a therapist. I've dabbled in a couple of things so far regarding work with children in that population, with intensive mental health. I'm also currently working with people who have sex addiction, porn addiction, and betrayal trauma. So a lot of couples that are going through trauma surrounding, and the people who really want to work it out, I see that they do. I think the public, it really depends, because there are some people who really have a negative understanding about the mental health model. Most families and different types of cultures don't really emphasize how mental health can support you, and going to therapy and just kind of working through your stuff. Having someone to bounce it off of. I think a lot of cultures tend to say, just deal with it on your own, or we don't talk about certain things like that, and it becomes very pressuring. The stress builds up. We are so detached from community and support where we can rely on others. I think the capitalist system and that mindset has really done a good job of coming into communities and saying, hey, we see all the things that you're doing to be a community, but we're going to take those elements and we're going to build on top of them, or we're going to make them better, and then we're going to sell it back to you. And so it just really disconnects people from the types of support that they should have. And then they end up having this hyper individualistic mindset where they think they can just do it on their own and do it alone. And it just furthers that loop of isolation. Yeah. Other than that, I am very passionate around the right to explore your consciousness, and just coming back to your roots and focusing on any indigenous roots. Yeah, that's me.
Many people misunderstand harm reduction as an enabling behavior. From a clinical standpoint, how would you explain what harm reduction is actually designed to do?
So harm reduction is a public health model that meets people where they're at in their use of drugs. I think a lot of people tend to assume that if we're going to do harm reduction, that we're going to completely be abstinent of using drugs. And beauty of harm reduction model says that you don't have to completely be abstinent in order to be healthy and work towards recovery. It's like thinking about jumping into something so soon. If you just try to go back to the gym and you do it so quickly that you burn out, you actually harm yourself. And then you recognize that, okay, maybe I don't want to do this anymore. Maybe I don't want to get well because it takes too much. I think too, with harm reduction, it's important for people who are using other substances outside of psychedelics, especially like methamphetamine, opioid use disorder. We're risking their lives. People could actually die from cutting off that use. And so harm reduction model comes in and says, okay, we're going to find a way to slowly titrate you off of this while also including personal wellness and daily living skills to help you change your lifestyle to go with the changes of titrating off of a drug that most people have around harm reduction.
Xanax and stuff like that. Like if you were to go cold turkey, you could literally have cardiac arrest, like seizures and all different types of things, for sure. And is that something that places provide, right? Like when a person is trying to do that, are they giving them, okay, I guess that's like the methadone, right?
Correct.
It's designed to lead people off, right?
They're designed to do that. I think the challenge, though, is it's helpful to put people in an environment where they completely don't have access to getting those drugs again and not having them be tested, especially for fentanyl. And so it saves them in that regard. But to be put into a program for 60 days to 90 days, it's really challenging, especially if they don't offer community and support building, and it doesn't always model them being in the real world. They're in this separate, isolated environment where they're focusing only on recovery, but not actually building skills around it to come back into the real world.
All right. So,
Yeah.
because trying to clean up, right? And it's generic as hell with no love. This is what the computer says is great to do it this way, right? But it's not realistic to someone actually being successful.
Absolutely. I think sometimes the medical system teaches people to not have agency and to trust their inner healing intelligence. And I think that's really big because it helps us connect to our bodies again. It helps us connect to our nervous system again. There's so many other forms of knowledge rather than the one that we've been, focusing so much on, which is logic. And yeah, it just disconnects us in that way. And I think the government has done a really good job at listening to voices that are more fear-mongering rather than asking questions around why this is something that people use. We all have our vices, but then within that, there are things that help us actually heal.
Right. Yeah, because it's a sickness.
Yeah.
You can't put a Band-Aid on it.
No, you can't.
So through your professional experience, what's a big difference you've seen with using pharmaceutical medications versus natural plant medications like psilocybin?
That's a great question. So I can speak from my experience.
Okay.
There was a time where I was really depressed and just low motivation, couldn't get out of bed. I would wake up at 10 a.m. and then end up going back to sleep all the way until 5 o'clock, often canceling on friends, passive suicidal ideation, where I just wanted to walk into traffic and I didn't know why I felt this way. I just felt this empty, gaping hole in my chest. And my parents and friends really tried to help and be supportive, but even depression is a really difficult thing to understand if you haven't really experienced it to that degree. So for some time, I ended up being on 2 different types of SSRIs, and they were helpful for a certain time until I realized, okay, things are starting to go back to where they were before. And my psychiatrist would up my SSRIs, and then it would be a period of time where I felt creative and happy and free, but it always felt like there was something missing in the background still. Right. So it helped the outward facing symptoms, but internally I still felt very empty and couldn't reconcile that difference.
Right.
And so with SSRIs, I was terrified to actually get off of it too, but I knew I didn't want to be on it forever either. And there were times where I was missing doses and then I would get brain zaps where it just felt like my brain would go offline for a second and just kind of quiver and then come back. And sometimes that would be really scary, especially if I was driving or if I was in a conversation with someone. Yeah. And so with SSRIs, it was helpful to a degree. But then when I started using psilocybin, I started to recognize that spirituality was missing from my life. It added this mystical experience that is very ineffable. You can't really explain it to others unless they, experience that too. And just having those experiences really created this wholeness in me where I wasn't ashamed of asking questions that I have always had around religion and spirituality. And it brought that back. And so I'm really thankful for that. And I started getting back to my roots as well. And that was something that SSRIs didn't provide. It just masked the symptoms. Right?
Yeah, from talking
That's
to
the
people,
Band-Aid.
yeah, we noticed that it kind of dulls them down and puts them, and life is like a roller coaster, right? The
Yeah.
SSRIs make everything like a flat plane, and it's just no emotion. You don't get to experience hurt. So something that feels great doesn't feel great because everything is on the same playing field.
Right.
So with the psilocybin, we notice that people get back to themselves and start feeling reality again.
Right. And it's really hard to say, just get off of SSRIs, try psilocybin, and there's the harm reduction again, right? Knowing your options, knowing your choices. But I know for a lot of people on SSRIs, they feel like they have to be on it for.
Right.
And when I switched to plant medicine and fungi use, there were times where I realized I don't actually want to do that this weekend. I'm good.
When you take an SSRI, right, it lasts with the duration of the medicine, and then it's gone. But you get those lingering effects with psilocybin, especially, right, that carry on. I've talked to people that have had visual experiences, and they'll feel great for a month straight after that experience. It just carries on that glow, that afterglow, that was the term most people use. And it's wonderful, right? Because us going through our daily mundane life, doing the same routine, right? And it's like you're not using all of the different neural pathways that you have in your brain. It's like you use the same ones to just go through life. And it's once you take psilocybin and it reactivates and creates new ones, it's wow, I do have more options, right? Like you said, SSRIs are great, right? But if you've been on them for 10 years and you haven't seen any change, it's like maybe I need to try something different.
Whereas SSRIs, it's just take this and it'll help with the symptoms, you're good. Plant medicine, I would come off of a journey and recognize, okay, these are the things that I took from it, and now what am I going to do with that? I have a responsibility to do something with new knowledge that I have. And so integrating that into my life was not really a thought that I had to consider. I just had to do that.
So as far as integration, it's a lot of stigma around the plant medicine, right?
Yes.
People think of it a certain way. Do you feel if the information got out to show a different perspective of psilocybin, and people had an option to choose from pharmaceutical grade medication or a plant medicine, which one do you think they would choose and why?
I think it would be tough at first because we have a lot of work in order to help destigmatize people's minds from the use of plant medicine. The crazy thing is that indigenous cultures and people have been using plant medicine for so long, and they have so much knowledge that a lot of Western culture comes in and says, again, hey, we're going to take this, we're going to build off of it, and we're going to sell it back to you. And often missing completely the reverence of plant medicine and like how sacred and how much we need to honor it versus I'm just drinking tonight and I'm just drinking a cocktail. There's no reverence in that, but there is when you have to create a routine and a practice around how you're going to ingest or take the plant medicine.
Right.
And so I totally.
Do you feel that if the plant medicine didn't have such a stigma behind it, would people be more inclined to take it based on your professional experience?
We often just send them to some sort of recovery program, 12 steps, which is really, at the end of the day, it's another way to add community. It's another way to add spirituality into your recovery. And just thinking about the co-founder of 12 Steps program, I think Bill Wilson, I want to say, like his first experience with LSD was transformational with how he created this program. And so I think that if people were able to really see how, without the stigma of plant medicine, I think they would want to choose that for themselves, where
Right.
they have more agency, they have more sovereignty and autonomy around how they use a substance that makes you have to bring in community. You can't do these plant medicines alone.
No, you can't. Yeah.
You know, it right back into your brain. We don't really know the mechanisms of how it does that quite yet, but there's so much opportunity in having that experience where sometimes you're not going to have positive thoughts. Sometimes you're going to have a challenging trip. And it's all about what you take from that, because sometimes when you have those critical voices get amplified in your head and you're questioning yourself, you're questioning your identity, it gives you the opportunity to figure out, how do I work with this discomfort? Because SSRIs are not going to help me work with discomfort. It actually masks it. But plant medicine helps me learn to work through the resistance that comes up and tap into my own inner strength and inner healing intelligence. And so it's really amazing what it does, but also back to harm reduction, back to the stigma around it. I think people, when they learn about psychedelics, they get like super excited,
Right.
and it becomes this like panacea of solving and healing any trauma that you're going through. And it doesn't do that. It's just another tool that allows you to find ways to look at yourself at a different angle.
And no one knows yourself better than you,
Yeah.
than yourself. That's what a counselor does, right? They're going to use their knowledge and their tools to help you figure out how to heal yourself properly.
Yeah.
And so taking something that could possibly help you do that for yourself, right? Certain people definitely need assistance, right?
Yes.
But in some cases, people are able to do it themselves, right? We've dealt with drug addicts that have got off of drugs, like really hard drugs, just microdosing or social dosing in their craving times, right? And they figured it out on their own without having to go to a meeting, and not everybody is like that, of course, right?
Sure.
But definitely using those tools to be able to make that happen is wonderful, right? Medical perspective, how can criminalization sometimes deepen the very problems that we're trying to solve with using natural medicines, right? Mushrooms,
Yeah.
things like that.
What ends up happening is what we're doing is we're taking people and we're feeding them back into another system. And the criminal legal system sometimes does not often incorporate a lot of mental health and the models used there. And so there can be a lot of recidivism where people leave the legal system and they end up doing the same thing or getting in trouble again and sending them right back into the prison system. And, I'm not even going to get into the whole reason behind the prison system and like how that is actually a different form of modern day slavery. But I think that it just doesn't help people actually have tools to equip them for everyday life. And sometimes people in the prison system too, they end up wanting to stay because you don't have to worry about the average everyday stressors of the world and reality when you go into the prison system. You are cycled on this schedule that rotates around food, and maybe there's attempts to incorporate people back into community, but it's not long lasting. So I think that's where we end up harming people, is just sending them into a whole other system of oppression.